Oral questions. Le chef de l'opposition officielle.
Mr. Speaker, every day we see the Premier taking over his ministers' files, departments, legislation, and even policy. We are watching the erosion of democracy as New Brunswick parents are removed from education governance. New Brunswick patients have their voices quashed from health governance. The minister is now going to override municipal governance, and these elected officials no longer have a voice. We are witnessing the centralization of power into the hands of one man, and we are witnessing the frustration of Cabinet and caucus with the Premier's erratic control and secrecy. The Premier clearly doesn't trust his team, and New Brunswickers no longer trust him or this government. I ask the Premier to lay out for us how he sees New Brunswickers and ministers' role in the governance of this province.
The Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's certainly, an interesting question, an interesting way to do politics differently. What we've seen in our province is a status quo formula for a long, long time. But you know what, Mr. Speaker? The province is no longer in a status quo mode. The province is a way that thinking differently is going to drive change that can meet the needs of New Brunswickers. Health is an example of that, Mr. Speaker. We go on talking about health and how it's performed, and we got to do changes. We got to have better management of health, and certainly one of the members across the way would know well about what better management's required in health. So in every aspect of this, Mr. Speaker, the support of ministers to get a change in their department to make things happen is all part of the formula. But some people resist change. Some people say we could just keep doing the same thing and it'll all be better. It'll all go away and we'll do just fine. Well, Mr. Speaker, health in the country is a crisis. That's why changes are needed in order to have a look at our health care in its entirety. And Vitality and Horizon working together to deliver the best health care in this country. And we can do it, Mr. Speaker. And education is another one, and the minister is strong to make the changes necessary, Mr. Speaker.
Chef de l'opposition.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. C'est clair que statu quo n'est pas une option, mais on va débattre qu'on a un système qui est géré d'une mieux façon maintenant, parce qu'on a un modèle de gouvernance qui enlève la voix de la public. Le Premier ministre dit qu'il a le support de ses ministres, mais moi, j'aimerais bien savoir, c'est qui qu'on devrait tenir comptable au manque de résultats de le plan de santé, parce qu'ils avaient des objectifs, puis ils les ont manqués. Est-ce qu'on tient le Premier ministre responsable pour ça? Est-ce qu'on tient le ministre de Santé responsable pour ça? C'est le ministre le Premier ministre qui a lancé le PDG de système Horizon, et ils n'ont pas pu remplir ces espaces sur leur nouveau système de gouvernance maintenant, parce qu'il n'y a personne qui veut cet emploi-là pour travailler avec du monde, qui peut leur lâcher à un moment. Alors, who can we hold accountable for the failure of the health system to deliver to the health plan goals that this government put forward?
Minister of Health.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I take great offence to the fact that the member opposite is saying that the health goals are not being met. That is incorrect, Mr. Speaker, and I'm going to correct the record right now. I've got lists of paper of some of the goals that have been achieved and some of the accolades of people saying the health care is actually turning around in the province. We know there's more work to do. We continue to do that work day in and day out. The commentary, public needs to know, health care is improving by Norbert Cunningham. That was just printed the other day. And Mr. Speaker, I find again myself having to keep the opposition on task or keep the opposition accountable. When the member opposite, the leader of the Liberal Party yesterday said that Medicare applications were taking months in order to get processed. Well, here's the facts. When the member opposite was talking in terms of weeks, the reality is those coming from outside Canada, the applications are done within 24 days. For those coming outside New Brunswick, 23 days. Mr. Speaker, we reacted, we got the job done.
Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate that we can get a specific number from the Minister of Health, different from the one that we received yesterday. But the Premier also mentioned education in his response. The Premier called himself for the elimination of Policy 713 over the head of his minister back in March and didn't include caucus in those changes. Why? For the Education Act, we saw a document tabled that had been sloppily drafted, and now we hear the debate that it's been going to get pulled, it's going to come back. No, it's going to get pulled. Maybe we'll get more time. There's a closure motion on the table to limit debate on an Education Act that has not been consulted with stakeholders, that hasn't been thoughtfully drafted. What is the chain of command? We are here to hold this governance model to account. So I'd like the Premier to walk us through the chain of command that he uses between a department, the ministers, his cabinet, and decision-making, because it's not at all clear that a good governance process is being followed.
Mr. Speaker, I think it's important to understand that the governance process is being followed is how do we find better ways to get results, Mr. Speaker? And every department is working with ministers to achieve that, and ministers are looking for options to do things differently. So, Mr. Speaker, in the discussion around 713, it was, okay, how do we get parents involved? Now, I would think the Leader of the Opposition would be keen to have families and parents play a role in their child's upbringing. And that's the process that the minister is going through right now, not walking away and say parents aren't part of the equation. And I think the Leader of the Opposition is well informed now about the interest that parents have of a policy they knew nothing about. So, Mr. Speaker, that is the balance we're trying to strike, have parents play a role in their child's future. Seems like a novel concept, Mr. Speaker, but one that our nation's been built on. So how do we make it happen, and how do we work and make sure people are safe at the same time? And now, Mr. Speaker, let's go to the Bill 46, which is going through endless debate here in the House rather than going to public policy or economic policy. And why? Because they don't really want to know the facts and talk about the details. Just talk, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Premier is absolutely right that we believe that families and parents have a key role to play in the education of their children. So can you tell us why he removed them from the governance of the education system?
Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the Leader of the Official Opposition for the question. You know, she got so many questions that she wants to ask in question period, yet they babble on continuously here, trying to stall moving forward in economic policy, where she could ask these questions and get the answers. You know, not grandstanding here in question period. Parents are not being removed from the education system, and they're not being removed from the education of their children. We believe in the parents' right to be involved in their education, both in the Education Act and in Policy 713. So, if she actually read it, she would see that DECs are still going to be elected. PSSCs are still going to be elected. The elected process is going to remain in place. So I'm not quite sure what she's talking about, Mr. Speaker, but I'd invite her to send it to economic policy where we could have a full debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If the Minister read the Education Act, which I understand can be challenging as it was changing on the fly and there's amendments coming, he would see that the authority of the DECs has been completely removed and the power has been put in the hands of the Superintendent and the Premier to direct the education system, curriculum, and its governance. And there's a lot of secrecy happening in education. You would well know that at the end of May, we had parents in Grand Bay Westfield learning of changes to French immersion in their schools, where it was going to stop being offered as early French immersion here, stop being offered late immersion there. We're going to bus students 85 kilometers down the road to a different school. And then a few days later, after parents wrote letters, magically we flip-flopped and those changes disappeared. Now we have parents wondering what's happening with French language reform as emails land in their box telling us these reforms are underway. So can the Premier answer a simple yes or no question? Can they commit that there will not be changes to French language learning in 2023-2024?
Time. Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm not sure who hasn't read what, but I don't see the word Premier written in the Education Act anywhere. So I'd invite the Leader of the Official Opposition to show me where that's written in there, because I've yet to see it. In terms of stripping DECs of power, like bring it to economic policy, we can talk about what the actual powers of a DEC is and what it will be. Currently, the DECs are advisory. They have one employee, the superintendent. They vote on the budget. They have no power to change it. They have no power to make any decisions regarding operational issues regarding how the district is run. And that stuff isn't really changing. The only thing really changing is the superintendent will be an employee of the department. And they're still going to be elected. They'll still view the budget. They'll still have recommendations.
Prime Minister. The chef de l'opposition.
Superintendent will be appointed, I believe is what your legislation said, unless there's an amendment coming that we haven't seen yet. But I asked a simple yes or no question. We had changes to French immersion being proposed in Grand Bay Westfield and then yanked. Can the minister or the premier confirm that there will not be changes to French language learning in the 2023-2024 school year?
Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm not exactly sure what the Leader of the Opposition is asking here. When she's talking about a couple of communities where there was not enough children registered to offer the French immersion program, the district made a decision. These things lie in the domain of the districts. They worked with the community to try and see that we could continue to offer the program. I'm not going to presuppose at this point in time what the districts are going to do. I know that we're going to continue to look at a better way to teach French to our children, because the results that we're getting are they don't suffice. I mean, we have a lot of room for improvement there. We've got some working groups that are looking at a lot of different things. French instruction is one of them. It's not to do away with anything, but it's how to improve it. Because I want to see more bilingual New Brunswickers. And I have a personal story about that maybe I can answer in the next question.
Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A yes or no answer would have sufficed instead of a non-answer. Municipal, I feel the same way. Municipal leaders have also lost faith in this government and the minister. The local governance reform process required relationship building, establishing trust, negotiations, and then partnership. Mais ça commençait bien, on va dire ça. Mais quand il y a eu le temps pour faire des décisions, hard decisions, the premier and the minister stopped communicating, dictated budgets, and chose to centralize power and decision-making. Mayors are on the front lines, serving their communities, and our team wants to see a decentralized approach that gets as close to community as possible and empowers municipalities to serve their residents. Instead, government has tabled another improperly drafted act that gives the minister powers to get into the back rooms of municipalities and override their decisions. What steps will the minister or the premier take to restore the trust they have lost with municipal leaders?
Minister of Local Governance Reform.
Monsieur le Président, tout au long, on a un plan qui s'appelle le Livre blanc. Unir nos efforts pour bâtir des communautés dynamiques et viables. Le plan est tout dans le Livre blanc, Monsieur le Président. 1.5, une commission indépendante. À plusieurs reprises par le passé, il fut proposé de créer une commission indépendante chargée d'examiner, d'évaluer, éventuellement de réglementer ou formuler des recommandations sur les questions touchant à la gouvernance de l'administration des gouvernements locaux. Monsieur le Président, il n'y a aucune surprise. C'est dans notre plan. C'est dans notre plan. Malheureusement, la chef de l'opposition n'a pas de plan. Elle n'a pas de plan parce que je ne crois pas qu'elle a lu le Livre blanc. Puis c'est ça ma frustration. Pour que les gens, on a eu des bonnes consultations. Malheureusement, il y a certaines personnes de l'opposition qui n'étaient pas là, mais on a consulté, on a parlé aux gens, puis on a venu avec un plan. Puis, Monsieur le Président, on suit le plan. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Minister.